نحمده ونصلي على رسول الكريم. Yusuf, you must catch that lesson of yesterday. That according to us, Faraz is to recite the minimum of what can be considered to be Quran. And Wajib is to recite Surah Fatiha and a surah or three of the shortest verses or one long verse equal to three short verses. That is the Wajib in Salah. If you leave out a Faraz, it means you made no Qiraat at all. If you left out a Wajib, that means you left out Surah Fatiha unintentionally, or you left out the Surah unintentionally. You can compensate for it with a Sajasahu. If you left it out intentionally, you have to repeat it in its time. And also, if you left it out unintentionally and you never make the Sajasahu, then also you must repeat it in its time. But once the time is out, there's no repetition, right? So that is what we discussed yesterday. So today we're going to show وَإِذَا قَالَ الْإِمَامُ وَلَا الضَّالِينَ. So now we did this masla referred to where you are a muqtadi, right? We'll discuss munfarid just now, right? So you in the masjid, or even a lady maybe, she is making jamaat with the husband at home, whatever, or she happened to be in the haram when the jamaat took place. So وَإِذَا قَالَ الْإِمَامُ وَلَا الضَّالِينَ, when the imam says وَلَا الضَّالِينَ قَالَ آمين, right? Then the muqtadi will say Ameen, right? Right. Right. وإذا قال ويقولها المؤتم. So here he's saying the muqtadi will say it, right? Right. And what's the proof? ويقولها المؤتم لقوله, because of the statement of the Prophet, إذا أمن الإمام فأمنوا. When the imam says Ameen, then you should also say Ameen, right? So this shows you that the imam will say Ameen and the muqtadi or the mu'attam both will say Ameen. You understood that? You got it? So this here, إذا قال الإمام ولا الضالين قال آمين, right, refers to the imam must say Ameen, right? And ويقول mu'attam, and then the second one is the mu'attam. The muqtadi will say Ameen, right? So from that you understand, according to the Hanafi madhab, both the imam and the muqtadi will say Ameen. I told you this would refer to anybody muqtadi, whether a man is in the masjid or even a woman by the house, she's reading with her husband, making jamaat, whatever, she will say, right? إذا أمن الإمام فأمنوا, right? ولا متمسك لمالك في قوله تعالى إذا قال الإمام ولا الضالين فقولوا آمين حيث القسمة. So see, there's a hadith that says like this here, إذا قال الإمام ولا الضالين فقولوا آمين, right? When the imam says ولا الضالين, then you must say Ameen, right? So before we look at the text, I'll try to explain to you what I'm saying. This is the hadith. The hadith is, for those who just joined now, just repeating that according to the Hanafi madhab, both the imam and the muqtadi will say Ameen. Even if it's a woman, she's reading behind her husband, or she was in the haram or whatever, and the imam said wala dalin, she will say Ameen softly, right? So there's a hadith that says when the imam says wala dalin, then you say Ameen. So Imam Malik says, see here, look at this here. He's saying this is how you make istidlal. He say, look here, this kismat, like I say, when I go, you stay. Just doesn't look, man, when I go from here, you must stay. What does it mean? That your duty and my duty separate. My duty is to go and your duty is to stay. You understand what I'm saying? So Imam Malik says, look at the hadith. He says, when the Imam says, wala daleen, the muqtadi say Ameen. So that shows you the Imam must only say wala daleen. The Imam mustn't say Ameen. You understand what I'm saying? So we say no. So that's Imam Malik's reasoning. That's his rationale. That the Imam will say wala daleen and the muqtadi will say Ameen. See. So we say wala mutamassaka. There's no real proof, or there's no way of deriving this proof, لمالك, like how Imam Malik done, في قوله صلى الله عليه وسلم, in the statement of Imam Nabi صلى الله عليه وسلم, إذا قال الإمام ولا الضالين فقولوا آمين. When the Imam says ولا الضالين فقولوا آمين, then you say آمين من حيث القسمة, that in the sense that you're dividing it, that the wazifa or the duty of the Imam is to say ولا الضالين, and the Muqtadi must say, I mean, we say, no, this is not correct. Why? لأنه قال في آخره, because the same hadith, if you look at the same hadith, at the end it says, لأنه قال في آخره فإن الإمام يقولها. It says there that the Imam, he will also say it. You understand what I'm saying? So we agree that maybe the first part of the hadith does suggest that the Imam will say wala dhaleen and the Muqtadi will say Amin. But the same hadith, if you look at it at the end, it says what? فَإِنَّ الْإِمَامَ يَقُولُهَا, that the Imam, he will also say Amin. And then there's another hadith also, I think it's coming in the Sabak, it says مَنْ وَافَقَ تَأْمِينُهُ تَأْمِينَ الْمَلَائِكَةِ, that person who is Amin, it coincides with the Amin of the Imam. So that shows you also there that the Imam will also recite Amin. You understood that? So the next thing is وَيُخْفُونَهَا لِمَا رَوَيْنَا مِنْ حَدِيثِ ابْنِ مَسْعُودٍ. So here we saying وَيُخْفُونَهَا, this refer to both the Imam and the Muqtadi. According to Hanafi Madhab, the Imam loud and neither the use with the Muqtadi, right? They say softly, both the Imam and the Muqtadi. That's why I say وَيُخْفُونَهَا, they will say it silently. Why? لما روينا, because of what we narrated من حديث ابن مسعود. There's a hadith of Ibn Mas'ud which says that you will yeah. Remember in the beginning there was a hadith where Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said 6 things you must say silently. Can you remember, Luqman? Can you find that hadith for us? 6 things that you must do silently. And he said from amongst them is Ameen. Yeah, oh, sorry, here's it. أربع يخفيهن الإمام. 4 things that the Imam will say silently, right? So these are from amongst them. That's the one thing. Loud. Right. So so there we got the hadith where where Ibn Mas'ud said that 4 things a person should say silently. And he mentioned the tasmiyah, the ta'awuz, the tasmiyah, and Amin must also be silently. So that's our first proof. Then the next proof is this, وَلِأَنَّهُ دُعَاءٌ. Amin is a dua. You actually say, may Allah Ta'ala accept. Like somebody tells you something, Allah Ta'ala give you good health, Allah Ta'ala accept from you, you say Amin. So Amin is, remember it is Asma'ul Af'al. What is Asma'ul Af'al? There are those nouns which come in the meaning of a fi'l, which means, oh Allah Ta'ala accept. Oh Allah Ta'ala accept from us. So it is a dua. And if you look at dua actually has to be done silently. That's the real thing. That's why in Allah Ta'ala says, "Ud'u rabbakum tadarru'an wa khufya." So, وَلِأَنَّهُ دُعَاءٌ, that Amin is dua, فَيَكُونُ مَبْنَاهُ عَلَى الْإِخْفَاءِ. So the basis of dua should be silently, right? So in some places they insist you must make loud dua, like after the salah, some must have a long, etc. We don't want to get into the technicalities of all those type of things, but yeah, وَلِأَنَّهُ دُعَاءٌ, because there's a dua, فَيَكُونُ بَبْنَاهُ الْإِخْفَاءِ, and the basis of dua is it must be done quietly, softly, right? Although now some ulama, they say, no, look, after salah, you must make a louder dua, because how will the people learn the du'as? How will the children learn the dua? Make soft dua, etc. That's a different discussion for another day. We can discuss it. And in particular, if you look at the ulama, they studied in Jalalabad. They're very particular about this. The ulama, they studied in Jalalabad. They're very particular about this, about making soft dua. And there you got the proof. أُدْعُوا رَبَّكُمْ تَضَرَّعًا وَخُفْيًا وَدُونَ الْجَهْرِ مِنَ الْقَوْلِ بِالْغُدُوِّ وَالْآصَالِ. Right. So in brief, they're saying Amin is a dua, so it should be done. So yeah, maybe you could strike a balance sometimes, maybe. Sometimes you make a loud dua for those people to learn. Or maybe some people argue that, look here, if you make a soft dua, people, their mind will wander. So you make a loud dua to capture, to keep the attention, whatever. But anyway, the main thing there you learn is that the real thing is when you're making dua, you cry softly to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? وَالْمَدُّ وَالْقَصْرُ فِيهِ وَجْهَانِ, right? وَالتَّجْهِيدُ فِيهِ خَطَأٌ فَاحِشٌ, right? وَالْمَدُّ وَالْقَصْرُ فِيهِ, right? So now, the next thing what they're saying is there is that when you can make mud, right? Or qasr. وَالْمَدُّ وَالْقَصْرُ فِيهِ وَجْهَانِ, right? It means you can say, what does mud means? Um, Ameen, right? Ameen or Ameen, right? وجهاني. والتشديد فيه خطأ فاحش. But to recite with tashdid, Ameen, that is not on, that is incorrect. You understood that? Ameen. So Ameen, Ameen, not Ameen. You understood that? So there are certain riwayat that suggest that maybe Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam made Amin loud, but we made Ta'amin loud. Our answer to that is simply that maybe that was in the initial stages of Islam, where it was done to teach Sahaba Ikram, or maybe even we could say maybe somebody was standing very close to Rasulullah, so they thought it was loud, right? Like how the Tasmiyah also, maybe in the initial stages, it was done loud, right? And also there is the riwayat of Alqamah, which said, خَفَضَ بِهَا صَوْتَهُ, right? He would make, who's there to phone what? Right, right. Read the next ibarat. So now, once you finish recited your Surah Fatiha, once you recited your Surah, is what is you going to do? Ruku. Bismillah, read. لأن النبي, yeah. So this is another important thing that we differ with this with the Salafis in that. You see, we say that the moment you start your movement, you must start your takbir. As your body starts moving, so this would be for the men and the women, not only for the men. And you notice some people, sometimes the imams, etc., they certain from sajda to you used to do that long takbir, so you sit in the shorties. This is the critical part. In Jami Saghir is mentioned, you will make takbir with him going down. So the moment you start going down, don't wait till you in. So this is also for the ladies also. Don't wait till you in ruku. Now you start the takbir. Or just at the beginning of ruku, you do the takbir, right? So you kabbiru ma'al inhitati. Start your takbir with your movement and finish it with your movement, right? Why? Because there's a clear hadith. لأن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يكبر عند كل خفض ورفع. There's a clear hadith that Nabi Sallallahu said that, or rather Sahabi said, Nabi Sallallahu used to make takbir عند كل خفض, with every going down and warafdin, and whatever coming up. So as I said, it means that your voice, your takbir, it must go inside with your movement, right? Right? ويحذف التكبير حذفا لأن في المد في أول خطأ. So you won't say, yeah, they saying, you won't say this. You just say Allahu Akbar. You say Allahu Akbar. Because Allah, those who know Tajweed, it is two Hamzas. So it means Allah. Is Allah Ta'ala the greatest? And that is not the idea, right? The idea is to state Allah Ta'ala is the greatest, not. And you say Allahu Akbar. That also is not correct. That's it. ويحذف. That's what it means, right? لأن المد في أوله خطأ من حيث الدين لكونه استفهاما, because to put a mud in the beginning, it's a mistake, right? لأن المد في أول خطأ من حيث الدين, from the side of deen, لكونه استفهاما, means from, it's like you're asking, how can you, the whole purpose of Salah is to extol the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah Ta'ala is the greatest, right? وفي آخر لحن من حيث اللغة, and to say Allahu Akbar, that there's no tajweed, there's no qiraat like that that supports reciting like that. That is also a mistake, right? ويعتمد بيديه على ركبتيه. Okay, the next one speaks about the exact way in which you should do the ruku, how your body should be. So I think I will leave this for tomorrow, because I also want to discuss, I want to mention also tomorrow, inshallah, the difference between a man's ruku and a woman's ruku. I will discuss it tomorrow. I told you, I mentioned to you before that a woman's, all the postures of a woman, right? It is based on what? It is based on satar. So we'll discuss that tomorrow, how a woman will do her ruku so that it's astur, there's more satar in it, etc. And then we'll discuss in detail the man's ruku. So tomorrow, inshallah, we'll do the man's ruku and we'll do the woman's ruku, which is astur. Bas subhanallah bihamdi, subhanakallah bihamdika, Allah Ta'ala accept it, inshallah.